background.
Yeah. And just like that, we are live. So thank you for everybody tuning in live. We have a lot of people that watch us on replay. So if you're watching us on replay, thank you for tuning in. I got my guy with Nibs with me right now. We definitely got some boxing topics we're gonna get into today. So what's going on, Nibs? You ready for this?
I'm ready, baby. Let's get into it.
Let's get it. So we're gonna get right into it. The first thing that we had a show last week, but Nibs wasn't on, so we'll take the time to talk about it now. Was we got a big fight announced, the first undisputed versus undisputed fight of the four belt era. It's even the first since I think it was Carlos Monzon fought a welterweight moving up. So it's been a long time since we've seen undisputed versus undisputed. So Jermell Charlo against Canelo. What are your thoughts on this matchup? And then, as always, salute to everybody tuning in the chat. Jesus Sam, thank you for being here. Are we watching Diego Pacheco? I think I will be. He's not on yet, I don't believe. Let us know in the chat where that card is at, because I definitely want to tune in later. But Nibs, what are you thinking about this Jermell Charlo Canelo matchup? Do you think the weight will be a factor, or just what are your kind of just overall thoughts when you saw that fight was announced?
Look, first off, thank you again to everybody tuning in. We appreciate it. Uh, you know what, bro? I'll be honest with you. At first, I was like, well, that's the most convenient shit I've ever seen in my life. You got a twin brother who just so happens to be the undisputed champ at 154, and he can step up and fight in your place. Like, if that ain't the most built in excuse to not have a fight in the world, I ain't never seen it
Mm-hmm.
before. But my thing is, and I'm pretty sure everybody is asking, why wouldn't you be able to fight in September? I get you going through all of your shit. We get that. But it's September, bro. It's not like we're talking about the fight is next week. You know what I mean? Or next month. We talking about a fight in September, and you knew about it months ago. That should have given you plenty of time to get yourself back. Unless Charlo's like 250 pounds now because he's just hasn't been doing shit, and since his last fight, which I doubt. We've seen him at his brother's most recent fight. He looked in shape. So, I don't know. Maybe his mental health really isn't all that great. I don't want to overthink nothing. But the fight itself, I don't think Charlo has a chance in hell of beating Canelo. If I'm being honest with you, I think he'll be entertaining as fuck. Like, you know what I mean? Um, but I just think Canelo at that weight, because he's moving up, right? Like there's no catch weight. He's moving up to the full 168.
Yep. So
It's
he's
not.
going from 154 up to 168. No catch weight, no nothing. Straight 168 fight.
Yeah, then it's a wrap, bro. Yeah,
Mhm.
like I could see if they were doing like, hey, we'll let you come up to like 163 or 165 or some shit. Nah, bro, you coming up to the full 168 from 154. Like, and I get Charlo's, the Charlos are some big boys, and they're not little dudes. So, he'll probably come in comfortable at the weight, obviously. But, you going from fighting 154 your whole career, and now in what, 3 months, 2 months, you got to fight a dude
Mhm.
who's been fighting at 168, 175 for years, comfortable too. You know what I mean? Like, and Canelo's a big boy. Like boy thickums. So it's not like you're gonna just come in there and knock him out. Unless he gets lucky. So you know, that's my take on it. I think Charlo's gonna get embarrassed.
Yeah. We'll see, because we agree on a lot of things. We don't agree totally on this one. I think I give Jamel a decent shot in this one, honestly. I think that one thing will be the weight. Obviously, he's a career 154. He's moving up to 168. A lot of people look and they see Charlo will still be the taller guy and the longer guy, but that doesn't mean, a lot of people think that means he's the bigger guy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. We see that he is a good sized guy, and I think that it'll be close in weight on fight night. The question will be, how does Jamel carry the weight? Because he's never fought up at 168 before. So adding those extra 14 pounds, does that make him a little bit slower? All those kind of things like that. But I think he's got a decent shot. I mean, I think that Canelo is still good, still near his peak, but he's probably coming down from that peak now after the Bivol fight, the Golovkin fight, the Ryder fight. But I think the styles probably play good for Canelo, because Jamel's not somebody who's, they kind of fight similar. He's not someone who's too active in the ring. They both kind of, they're calculated with their power shots. They make every shot count. But Canelo would rather go against a guy like that than he would against a guy who's going to throw a lot of punches and really kind of use that jab. So I think Jamel will use the jab. He definitely should use the jab. I think it'll come down to how just, I guess, how much he throws his hands. If he waits and goes, like you said, if he goes shot for shot with Canelo, who's the bigger, stronger guy who's been at this weight, I don't think it'll go well for him. But I think if he does try to kind of lead the show or lead the dance, as people like to say it, if he's throwing that jab out there, if he is throwing combinations, I think he's got a decent shot. I think that Derek James is a great trainer. I think he'll have a pretty solid game plan for him. So at the end of the day, if I had to favor one guy, I would still favor Canelo. But I think that Jamel's got a really good shot, honestly. And I think that the historic implications behind this, if he were to win this fight, you'd be undisputed at 154. You go up and you beat the biggest name in the sport, undisputed 2 weight classes higher. I thought he was already a guy who was Hall of Fame level, but that's some real Hall of Fame shit we're talking about now. Pound for pound level, maybe number 1 Hall of Fame level. Like, these are the things we want to see. We say in boxing, like, daring to be great. I think it gets overused sometimes, but I think this is a perfect example of it right here, because Jermell Charlo shows that he really does want all that smoke.
I'll say this: you make a hell of an argument. I mean, bro, with the stats and everything, I look at it like this, right? And I say Jermell Charlo is probably, he's hands down the best 154 dude in actively boxing right now. Nobody can touch him, right? He could probably move up to 160 and whoop just about everybody else that isn't named Charlo. You know what I mean? Himself. 168 is different, bro. That's you know what I mean? That's a whole different kind of world. And I get it. It's still within that middleweight because it's super middle, but that's a whole different kind of level, bro. And to fight a guy who's been fighting at that weight as long as Canelo has been, he's way more comfortable in it than even if Jamil walks around at 175, 180. You know what I'm saying? He still hasn't been fighting at 168. And to me that makes a huge difference. Like, you look at Floyd when he came up, to fight, the Golden Boy, when he came to fight Cotto at 154, right? Cotto fights at that weight, so he made it interesting. Why? Because Floyd's a little dude. He's not, he's not a, that weight. No matter how great you are skill wise, fighting at that weight is a whole different beast. I will say this though, you are right that he does have a chance because his boxing acumen is what it is. And I'll say this: if he does pull it off, let's say Charlo, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say I'm riding with you and he wins, right? He should be number 1 pound for pound on everybody's list the following day. No, don't ask me no questions. Don't make no arguments for this dude, that dude. No. If he wins, he should be number 1 pound for pound on everybody else's list. Shut up about it. That's the way I feel.
Yeah, but I think that we both we shall see on that one. But I think he's already a pound for pound guy. I think you would already say that he's a pound for pound level guy already right now, right, Jamel? Yeah. Which is good because he's someone who's dealt with. Yeah, and that's what I'd have him right around there, that 4, 5, 6, 7 range. But for whatever reason, it seems like the media and stuff like that never kind of give him his just due. They always kind of move the goalposts. It's like, oh, they picked Castano to beat him. And then once he beats Castano, it's, oh, well, 154 isn't that great anyways. It's like, no, actually 154 is one of the deepest weight classes we have. And it's like, oh, but he didn't look great against Harrison and Castano. It's like, well, he knocked him the hell out in the rematches. Like, there's always kind of something with him, but I do like that he gives everyone a chance, basically. He said if he wins this fight, everybody can basically shut their mouth because there's going to be no more. I think win or lose, if he even puts up, he's in a good spot because if he puts up a good fight, they go to a decision and we're wondering who won. I think that's even a win for him at the end of the day, just like you said, because so many people aren't even giving him a shot to win. I think as long as he makes it competitive, I think that's all we can ask for. And I think he will. I just think he's one of those guys that once you get him in a fight scenario too, it might be for better or for worse, but he's one of those guys who will bite down and with that dog, and he will do everything he can until that last bell to win the fight. We've seen it in the Harrison fight, the Castano rematch. No matter what's happened, even the John Jackson fight early on in his career, like he might be getting touched up at times, but he kind of keeps moving forward and he keeps fighting until that last bell. So it'll be interesting to see how he deals with the power of Canelo because he's been touched up by other guys. And to your point, he's never fought at 168. So he's never carried the weight himself, but he's also never been hit by a full-fledged 168 in Canelo either because Canelo is a big puncher, especially to the body also. So as long as he can, this is a big if he can kind of wear the punches of Canelo, he doesn't want to wear too many of them, but if he's able to take that power, I think it becomes much more of a 50-50 tactical fight, but I guess we got to see how that plays out.
the reason people give him shit, right? In my opinion, maybe it's different. I do think you're right. I do think people look at 154 as, kind of like, the stepchild to 160. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, you know, it's the stepchild between 160 and 147. Like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, these are just the leftovers.
Yeah. Which is funny too, because 154 is better. Like 160 might be the worst division now too. So it's funny how people think that, but it might not necessarily be true too. But you're 100% right with that.
Yeah, because it's history, right?
Hmm.
Historically, 160 has been the better one. 147, obviously, we it's got some of the biggest stars in it, right? Those two divisions might have the bigger names, right? But to your point, 154 has probably got the most talent in it. These guys might not be the biggest names, but the reason they're not the biggest names is because they're not chasing names. They're chasing, glory. These guys are fighting each other. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? They're fighting each other young too. Like there were guys at 154 fighting each other, 10, 12 fights into their career, risking it, against undefeated guys. So when you have a division where everybody's fighting each other, yeah, there's not going to be, super big names because nobody's building records. Nobody's building up that bullshit. They're just getting in there fighting. And I like that part. But then, you look at, he's had some rough fights, right? Against guys maybe people thought he shouldn't have had rough fights against. The first fight with Harrison, I thought he won, but it was a little
Hmm.
rougher than most people thought. He took a L. The Austin Trout fight, a lot of people thought was harder than it should have been. Um, you know, getting a decision against Gabe Rosado, when most people thought he should have, got him out of there, etc.
Hmm.
But again, it's one of those things where you're looking at these fights and it's like, hey, look, man, he's beating everyone he's gotten into the ring with, and he's beating the creme de la creme. Castano is a legit opponent, bro. We're not talking about a bum. This dude probably
Hmm.
beats everybody else and 154. You know what I mean? Easily to boot. So, and you got to give the man credit for what he's done so far. I think he's biting off a little bit more than he can chew. Going up against Canelo at that way again at that weight. If there was a catch weight involved, I'd probably be a little bit more on the side. But I will say this: based on his boxing skills, yes, he has a chance. I just don't think it's a very good one.
Yeah, that's why it is a great fight, and these are the things that we want to see too. Like we want to see, okay, you might be biting off more than you could chew, but let's see if you actually are or not. There's too many guys who we never kind of get to see their full capabilities. Like I said, 154. That's why I like it a lot too. Is they fight each other. They all have losses and stuff. I love the welterweight division, but part of the problem is when you have like 7 or 8 out of the top 10 all undefeated, we don't really know exactly how to rank them. And there's a reason they all look so good is because they're not fighting each other. So if they were all fighting each other, like you said, if they're in these wars with each other, yeah, some of them would have losses. It would be easier to rank the guys, but that's what we want at the end of the day. And 154 is giving us those answers. Like someone like Erickson Lubin's taken a few losses, but we look at who he's lost to, and we don't look at him any worse. He's still an elite fighter, and he's probably got a world title in his future at some point.
Erickson Lubin could probably go to 147 and clean up,
One,
most of the
one,
division, bro.
160 too. He could move up to 160 and do that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you know what I mean. Like he could probably beat most of the guys in their top 10.
mhm.
There are a couple of guys he might have some problems with, but we're talking. You know what I mean. You look at Charlo, like I said, right? Charlo, if he wanted to, could move up to 160. The only reason he hasn't is because his brother's there. Like
Mhm.
you look at some of the top guys at 154 could go up or down a weight class and do work. Um, then you look at 147, right? Now we're finally getting the Errol and Bud fight. You know what I'm saying? How long has that been marinating? Shit. You know what I mean? Bud damn near 40 years old. You know what I mean? Like, come
Mhm.
on, bro. Cut that shit out. These dudes are young and fighting each other in 154. 162, you know what I mean? Those guys been fighting each other. Look, Canelo is got a couple losses on his record, but you look at who he's lost to. Nobody's giving him shit for losing to Bivol and Floyd. Like, come on, bro. You know what I mean? So I just think it's trash. Like, if you're fighting the top guys, we say this all the time. If you're fighting the top guys and you lose, especially if it's competitive, like if you lose in competitive fights, nobody's giving you shit about it because you're fighting the top guys. Now, if you fighting a whole bunch of tomato cans and then one of those guys just so happens to beat you, you
Mhm.
could damn near lose your career over that. So you might as well, fight the top guys in the division. Like Mungia, I can't stand that cat. He's getting on my nerves. Fight the top guys. If you take an L, we'll still love you. Just come on back. It's look like you said. Charlo lost to Harrison, right? His career isn't over. He's the undisputed champ. Like, cut it out, bro.
Undisputed champ, and he's made a lot of money, and he's going to make a lot of money later on this year too. So things work out. The one thing some people I think might be joking with it too when they kind of make these comments. I know because Tim Tszyu does have every right to be just kind of upset because that was the undisputed fight he was looking for. But I don't want to hear one person seriously sit here and say that Jermell is ducking Tim Tszyu. I think that's like just a crazy thing to say. Some people might be joking when they say it, but if you really think he's ducking Tim Tszyu, because I think that would have been a real fight, 100%. I think Tim Tszyu is a real threat. I would have picked Jermell, but he's a real legit fighter, taking nothing away from him. But he's not ducking Tim Tszyu to go fight Canelo Alvarez, guys. Like at the end of the day, he's fighting a bigger, stronger, better version of Tim Tszyu. So people might be joking when they say it, but whether or not, I want that shit to stop right now because I think it's just crazy to say, yeah, you're ducking Tim Tszyu. Who are you fighting? Oh, the undisputed champion, 2 weight classes higher. Just sounds silly. It's silly shit. So
let's be real clear. If Tim Tszyu was offered that fight, he'd have jumped at that shit too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Cut it the fuck out. It's just like the Floyd factor, right? Back in the day. I don't care who you are. If the phone rings and Floyd's on the other end of the phone, you take that shit. Right? It doesn't matter what weight class. Yes, I will fight you. Yes. I don't care. Whatever you want. Yes. You know what I mean? Because you're going to get 10 million out the gate before you even lace the gloves up. If Canelo calls you, yep, I'm there. Canelo calls me tomorrow. I'm in there, baby. Look, you understand? I'm getting put to sleep, but I'm in there. Canelo calls, you answer, bro. That's all it is. You can say what you want to, and he's talking tough. He's trying to sell himself. I get it. Let's be real, bro. Anybody Canelo calls, he's saying yes to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have less of a problem. Like I said, Tszyu, I'm sure understands the game and stuff. I'm sure his team's gonna try to play it up as they're choosing someone else, blah blah blah. But I'm more talking about especially the media members piggying back off it. It's like, guys, let's be real. But that's another thing I talk about with Jermell Charles for whatever reason. Like, bro, we got people still complaining and saying this and that. It's like he's doing more than, like you said, probably biting off more than he can chew, doing things you guys dream of fighters to do, and we still have people saying shit at the end of the day. So can't please everybody. If you're a real boxing fan, you're gonna be pleased by Jermell Charlo, win, lose, or draw against Canelo. I think that's all that matters.
I think that I'll all joking aside, for real, I think that it's going to be an entertaining fight as long as it lasts. I think that Jermell Charlo is not going to come in there to lay down and he's not just there for a payday. I think he's going to come in. He's going to give Canelo some fits early on. Now, I will say this. If he boxes the shit out of Canelo, if he follows the Bivol game plan, Canelo could be in some trouble because boxers give Canelo problems. But if he gets in there and he tries to do the Charlo thing, I think he'll get knocked out. But I think he will have a chance as long as the fight lasts.
Yeah, but that's why I think I lean to Derek James being a big thing for Charlo too, just because Joan Guzman also in his corner. 2 guys who are great trainers. They've seen a lot in the sport too. And I think that Jermell has a really good jab. He doesn't use it sometimes because he doesn't need it against certain guys. But I think that they know at the end of the day, that's going to be a big component. Like you said, Bivol, Floyd, these other guys who have even Golovkin before. The jab is a good way to neutralize Canelo. It kind of helps him doesn't allow him to kind of get going. He has to reset every time he gets hit with it. So I think that is going to be a big tool for Jermell. So he isn't someone who I think he's got the skills to do it. But like you said, also, he's not someone to lay down, but he's also not someone to sit on the back foot and box either. So he is going to make it maybe better or for worse for him, but it's going to be an entertaining fight. And I will say, just don't count him out. So if you're not picking him to win, anybody out there, I got no problem with that. But crazier things have happened. So I guess we shall see what goes on.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So next thing we'll touch on quickly is just Jared Anderson fought last weekend against Charles Martin. I talked to Abraham Nova earlier this week because I was up in the gym with him and some other guys from around my area, and me and him shared a lot of the same thoughts on this. Just that Was it the performance a lot of us expected out of Jared? Maybe not, but I think he answered some questions in there that we haven't seen answered from him before. I think just showing the ability to get rocked. We always say, oh, well, once a guy gets rocked and take a shot, how does he respond? And he responded. He ended up winning the fight. Clearly, I think he lost 1 round, maybe 2 rounds, a few scary moments at the end too, but at the end of the day, he got the win. He moves on. So what were your thoughts on just from watching Jared last week?
I wanna address something really quickly on
Mm-hmm.
that fight that pissed me off when I saw it online. People were treating Charles Martin like he's a tomato can, like he's
Mm-hmm.
a nobody or washed up. Is he is he on the championship level of Deontay Wilder and all those other guys? No, but to say that this dude's a tomato can, he's a champ, albeit short lived. You know what I mean? He's got before that fight was he 29-3, 26 knockouts, something like that. The guy wasn't a bum, and he's got a good, decent resume on his on his hands. His 4 losses are to guys at the top, right? We're not talking about a guy who's lost to bums before. So I want to clear that up. Charles Martin is not a bum. If you can beat Charles Martin and you can beat him convincingly, you're doing pretty well for yourself in the heavyweight division. With that being said, I think had Charles Martin gotten that fight on a full camp, he probably would have beaten Jared Anderson. So I think Jared Anderson, he took advantage of the fact that he's getting this guy on short notice because he gave him a lot of problems. But I love Jared's response, right? He was in trouble. What was that, the 5th round? He was in some deep waters, and he got himself out of it. He made some adjustments later on, but he's got some things to make some changes to, bro. And I hope him and his camp get in there and get those things fixed quickly, because if they don't, it'll be another Joe Joyce situation. You're gonna get in there with somebody who's gonna capitalize on those mistakes we all see, and it's a wrap.
Yeah, I think the biggest one you're talking about, which you don't have to be some crazy guy to see. I mean, I'm going to say it, but I think everybody basically sees it. What you're saying too is just when he pulls straight back with his head too, he kind of just goes like this to kind of get out of the way of shots, which works when you're fighting smaller fighters, but he's not a huge heavyweight. So fighting against Charles Martin, a big, tall guy with a long left hand, we saw that wasn't able to work as much anymore. Like you said, though, I mean, I was happy to see the way he responded, especially in that 6th round. So the casual fan and stuff might not be able to appreciate it as much, but to see somebody rock the way he was in round 5, hit with a bunch of shots, and then to control round 6 with just his jab, I think that is what separates him from the rest of those heavyweights. He's not the biggest, strongest guy. He's not going to be able to come back and just whack out Charles Martin with one punch. If he caught him clean, he definitely could. Don't get me wrong, but those are the boxing skills that I think separate him from the rest of those guys, and I think that that's why he showed at the end of the day. Things we had always talked about, that he has those boxing skills. He hasn't had to show it yet because he's been steamrolling guys out of there, but we saw in a fight like this, fighting those bigger guys, he can kind of become the master boxer in there, and I think that'll definitely bode well for him going forward, because he will always, most of the time, he will be the smaller guy in there.
And that, to just what you said right there, right? He's used to steamrolling guys. So this was his first time actually getting in there with somebody that didn't know the assignment, that wasn't just going to roll over and play dead. He got a guy in there who's, probably a B-level fighter at this point in his career, but a really good B-level fighter. Like, Charles Martin's probably a B-plus fighter at this point, right? So again, beating him is definitely a cat, a feather in your cap. However, you know what I'm saying? Not everybody you fight is going to react the way you want them to when you punch them really hard. Sometimes guys get hit really hard and go, oh, okay, take 2 of these. You know what I mean? So that's what Charles Martin did. After he got knocked down, you saw his response, right? He adjusted to the things that got him knocked down in the first place. He was never really in trouble the rest of the fight. He took some shots, don't get me wrong, but he was never really in trouble of getting put out of there. And what Jared needs to understand is that guys at that level, that's what they're going to do. If you want to fight, guys at the championship level, you want to get a strap, no one's laying down for you. You know what I mean? And a lot of these guys are very smart. They're thinking in the ring while you're throwing punches. You might land something in the 2nd round and get knocked out trying to land it in the 4th. So he as long as he understands that, and they can, for the love of God, fix that going straight back shit. Yeah, because let's face it, you know, he gets in there with some guys with a little bit more pop. If he's in there with a Luis Ortiz, even as old as he is,
Mm-hmm.
that dude's got thunder in both his hands still, right? Even in Andy Ruiz at this point, you know what I'm saying? Andy Ruiz can still pop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even going to talk about Deontay Wilder. That would that would be unfair, bro. But
Yeah,
even a Jordan,
we still like Jared, so we're gonna leave him off that.
yeah. We still like him. And I say this because I'm a fan. I want him to fix this shit because I do think that he can be the next great American heavyweight. It's like the shit Mike Tyson never fixed because he just kept knocking everybody the fuck out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then he fought somebody who didn't know the assignment, and we saw how that went. Please fix it. Please.
Yeah. And I'd assume that he will too, just he's a well-schooled guy. It's one of those things that I think if you put more attention, they'll have more attention on it now than ever before. Because they might have seen those things and might have talked about it. But at the end of the day, Jared's probably sitting there saying, yeah, I'm working on these things, but I don't have to use them to fight yet. So it goes to the back of your mind. Even if you're doing it subconsciously, you're not thinking about it as much. And now he will be thinking about it. But to go back to one of the points you said too, I think a lot of people underestimated how much of a step up this was for Jared too. Charles Martin was a real world level guy, and I had wrote an article last week, and me and Dakota talked last week too. And I had still picked Jared to win the fight by knockout, but I was just saying to people like, don't be surprised if he does get clipped. We've seen him get clipped in other fights, and he's fighting the first guy who was bigger than him and was an actual puncher too. Charles Martin. Is he Muhammad Ali? No. Is he Deontay Wilder even? No, but he's someone he's a tall, rangy southpaw, and he knows how to land that straight left hand. And he's sharp at it. And that's what kind of has got him to the dance. And he's a savvy enough vet to know how to survive in there also, like we've seen. So, and he was beating Luis Ortiz before he lost that fight. He was winning, not knocked Ortiz down. Then Ortiz kind of had him stuck straight air, forgetting where he was. But he's a legit fighter. Like I said, I think a lot of people kind of slept on. I've always been high on Jared too. So I thought he was going to not wipe through Charles, but I did think he would get the stoppers. But I think for all of us, we got to just kind of slow it down on a lot of these young guys too, and just remember that they do have to progressively step up, step by step too. And I think Martin was almost like 2 or 3 steps, and he still passed the test. Don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of people underestimated and thought it was just going to look like his last few performances.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, everybody wants you to look like Jared Anderson every time they see Jared Anderson, right? You want to see the show. You want to see the guys getting highlight reel knocked out. You know what I mean? You're not always going to do, especially again, once you start stepping up. And here's one thing though. You've already stepped up to Charles Martin, right? Don't go backwards, right? We want to see you fight a step up from that now, right? Don't go back and start fighting these bums because you want to build your confidence up. Maybe one, but keep going forward. Start, fight the guys we really want to see you start fighting. Make the adjustments, bro. He's talented enough. And that was a beautiful dog too, by the way. I just want to point out that dog he has, Azul. But another thing too, Charles Martin's going to get another call because of his performance against Jared Anderson. Let's not forget that, right? Like, he's not a name that's putting fear in anybody's heart, but he's now a name where people are going, oh, okay, hold on, let's bring Charles in and see what we can do, even if it's not for a fight, but let's get him in the ring and sparring and and this, that, and the third. But I hope and pray Jared fixes his issues. He's proven that he's got a little bit of a chin too, because he took some. He took some hellacious shots against Charles Martin that probably would have put in just about anybody else down on their ass, and he took him and kept on moving. So I like what I'm seeing, bro. I think in the near future, Jared Anderson is still going to be a world champion. I'm not backing off of that. I said he was going to be a future champion, some months back. I'm sticking with it. I think he fixes those problems, and there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I'm not moving off that too at all. I think it's a classic example of just people have said to every single great fighter had 1, 2, 3, even 5 fights along the way on the rise up that didn't go exactly how you wanted to play. People got to remember, like, this isn't a video game. Like, this is real life, and you have another real trained elite boxing human being across from them trying to win and feed their family. This isn't a video game where it's like, oh, this guy's just going to win right away. Sometimes it happens like that, but a lot of times it doesn't. So I think people need to realize that and just realize also, like you said before, he's young. He's 23 years old. For heavyweights nowadays, that's really young. They all kind of more get into their primes into their 30s and late 30s. So he has a decade, 15 years. I know he's talked about leaving the sport earlier, but if he wants to, he could be around at a high level for 10, 15 years. So I think that we don't want to see him step back. Like you said, I think the perfect kind of fights would be former champions also around that Martin area, maybe a step up, maybe like a Joseph Parker or Luis Ortiz, someone kind of in that same area. So we don't want to see a step back, but I don't think there's any rush to kind of put him in with the top guys yet either. I think that he's well on his way to being there. And all those other guys, the Fury, the Usyk, AJ, Wilder, those guys all only have a few years left anyway. So I think continue to get your season and continue to step up. And once those guys are out of the picture, I think you should be all set.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect timing for him if you think about it, right? Like I said, the only thing that the Martin fight proved, he's not ready for the big boys yet. He's got some work to do, but he's got what it takes, right? He's got the chin, he's got the heart, he's got the skill. Now he just needs to fine tune some shit, get in there with some, like you said, some seasoned vets who can give him some work and move up and start fighting those real guys. I think give him 3 years, he can be a world champion, bro, in my opinion. But if he starts biting off big pieces, well, it's like, okay, well, we fought Charles Martin. We're going to fight, Big Bang Zhang next or some shit like that. Nah, don't do that. Don't do that, bro. Don't do that. You look at guys like that, right? Zhang, a lot of people kind of wrote him off after he had a loss. He comes back and worked the shit out of Joe Joyce, Now people are kind of looking at Joe Joyce the same way, like, oh well, he's not shit because I mean, bro, let Zhang hit you a couple of times and see how you don't react. You know what I'm saying? So I think people need to stop overreacting. Jared Anderson is going to be completely fine. He had a bad night at the office and still won. So let's call it what it is: learning experience.
And still won almost every round. It's not like he won a split decision or anything. He won wide. There was no question who won the fight. And I hope all you guys realize, because I know we definitely realize it, but I hope all you guys realize that most prospects would not have gotten out of that fight right there. When they were getting hit with the shots he was, especially late in that 6th round, he was already rocked. He was standing straight up, and he got clipped with a huge left hand over the top. And at least 80, maybe 90% of those young heavyweights go down and do not get up from that either. I can guarantee that right now. So I think that, like you said, for Jared, I think we always talk about questions that haven't been answered in boxing yet. Well, he answered a lot of those questions now, maybe a bit earlier than some people had thought, but you'd rather answer those questions now than answer those questions in a title fight. So at the end of the day, I'm not selling any stock on him. I think he'll be just fine in the future as long as they continue to play it right, which I know at Top Rank they will.
Yeah, he's gonna get moved right, and he's gonna learn from it. I believe it. You see a lot of guys sometimes they don't learn shit from their hardest fights. They just go back to what they've, like I say, all the time. People fall in love with the shit they do well. Nobody wants to work on the shit that they don't do well. And I think that's, one of those things. I know I bring him up a lot, but it was one of those things I fell in love with watching Floyd. He said, look, I work on all this shit so that there's no weaknesses, right? And De La Hoya even mentioned this. He went to one of Floyd's camps and he says, look, this dude's working on all the shit he doesn't do that well. So, against these kind of fighters when he's fighting them, so that he doesn't have to worry about that shit. I think that's one of those things that these young guys kind of forget about. Get in the lab, work on all the shit that you don't do well. Because let's face it, Jared, you can punch, you can knock anybody out, right? You've got style, you're able to move, but work on the shit that gets you hit, that almost lost you this fight in that 5th round, or that it got you wobbled late in the fight. Work on that shit, because everything else is gravy.
Yeah. And that's a good thing, I think, with a lot of these guys is they know those things, but until they met with a moment like Jared was last week, then it really kind of hits them. So I think he's got a smart team around him. They got a lot of just trainers who have been around the game for a while, multiple guys who work with them. So I got no doubt at the end of the day that they're going to take that film. And one thing I talked about with Abraham, which you'll definitely agree with too, is just think about how beneficial those 10 rounds will be for him film-wise. All of his fights are going 2, 3, 1, 4. Maybe I don't think he'd ever been out of the 5th or 6th round before. So he now has 10 rounds of film. So all those pulling back and all those things we're talking about, staying on the center line.
And what was his toughest fight before that? What, Jerry? Like,
Yeah, I think on paper it should have been Jerry, but we saw how that fight, and even that fight, he was clipped 2 times right away, and then he threw 150 punches, and so it wasn't even a question. I think he had a fight against this guy Kingsley eBay before that went into the 6th round.
Yeah.
So and that was a big, strong guy. That wasn't someone who was going to beat him or anything, but that was the furthest he had gone. But think about how beneficial these 10 rounds would be for him film wise, because all those things we talked about, he was getting away with before. Now they can look and see those things. Say, hey, well, this is an actual real situation where we could have kind of did things differently. So I think those will help him out also, because the 30 minutes of film, I think will be just you can't put a point on how valuable I think that'll be for him going forward. Also, people
with
always
the right
underrate
team,
that.
this is the best thing to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
If he'd have got a quick knockout, it would have been horrible for him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he got exactly what he needed from this. Is what I'm thinking, and then I think that's what you're saying is, he got his medicine and he got exactly what he needed. He'll be all right.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited to see where he goes next. I'm sure he's going to look to stay active because he took some big shots. It's not like he took a ton of punishment. So I'm excited to see. I think he's going to get in one more fight later on this year. And like you said, big things coming for him. If I were you guys out there, if you have any stock on him, I wouldn't go selling it right now. I'd even consider buying in right now, because maybe some of those people are kind of wishy-washy, saying, oh, I saw the people saying like, oh, well, does he really have the chin to be a heavyweight, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, if he didn't have the chin, guys, he would have been on the fucking canvas and he wouldn't have got up. Like, at the end of the day, he has the chin, he has the heart,
Right.
he has the boxing skills, he has everything. Just little things that you got to fix, and like you said, they'll be able to fix those things for sure.
Who would you like to see him fight next? That's what I'm curious.
I guess maybe so. Like I said, either a Joseph Parker or a Luis Ortiz. I think 2 different styles. Maybe you go the Parker one first. Parker's not as much of a puncher; he's more of a mover, but he's still a slick guy in there, and he can still throw a punch. Don't get me wrong. And then maybe you go Luis Ortiz. I wouldn't mind the Ortiz fight because it's another southpaw who can hit hard, and he fought Martin too. So I think that either one of those would be good. I think he's at the point now where it's going to be all name guys that we know and guys that we've seen multiple times. So are there any other names that you're looking at that you kind of would want to see him in with? Because I think there's some other guys that are around the heavyweight division I think you could want to see him in with.
I like the Parker thing. I think that might be a little much right now for him after what I saw against Charles Martin. I don't know about next, but I would like to see that maybe – you get a fight and then move into a Parker kind of arena, because I do think Parker's still slick enough to give him some issues he might not be ready for. And Parker's been active, right? Like he just had a fight, after his knockout loss to Joyce. He's been active, so I wouldn't mind. What's the guy that actually beat Zhang before he got the Joyce fight? What's that dude's name?
Philip Hergovich. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing him against that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he could give that. I think he could get that guy out of there after what I saw in the Zhang fight. But that dude can crack, so he'd give him some issues. I wouldn't mind seeing, and I know it's a stretch because he's a cruiserweight. I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Dorticos.
Okay, yeah. The Cuban guy, yeah.
Yeah, because Jared's a smaller, heavyweight. Maybe that guy moves up, gives him a little bit of, some work. Uh-oh.
You good? I still got you on air.
Oh yeah, my internet went out. So my screen turned black on you. Just one second. I gotta.
Yeah, no problem. But yeah, so just a few of those other names, if you guys are still listening. I think that there's a few other guys that would be interesting to see. I think that Otto Wallin, guy who we saw fight Tyson Fury, that's the guy who gave Tyson Fury the big cut. I think that would be another interesting fight. More like Parker, where he's more of a mover. So I think I want to see Jared in with a lot of different styles right now, too. He's got the amateur. He wasn't an Olympian because he turned pro earlier, but I think he's got the amateur pedigree where he's seen a lot of different styles. So I'd like to see him against a southpaw puncher, a right-handed puncher, a southpaw mover, a right-handed mover, all those kind of things, because I think once you get to the top, you can face anybody. So the most experience out there you can get, I think, would be good for him. So I think any of those guys would be perfect. Even another fight I'd love to see, which I know this guy was on Twitter saying that Top Rank wants to slow it down. They don't want this fight for him yet, but I think Michael Hunter would be a great fight for Jared too. I know that Michael came out.
Dangerous fight. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's why Michael Hunter came out and basically said, yeah, I'd love that fight, but I don't think Top Rank likes that fight right now. So I
What
would
do you
love
think
that fight.
about Pulev?
Hmm.
Like Pulev or Chisora, one of those kind of guys.
I could see. I wouldn't mind those. I think those might be a half step even down from Charles Martin. I think that some of those guys have maybe won some better fights at different times, but I think at this point in their career, I think Martin might pose more danger. Chisora is very decorated stuff, but I think he would just be one of those guys who would more kind of shell up and let Jared do his thing. And I don't know if he doesn't have the length or just the one punch. He can punch, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he has the length and would be able to line up a shot like Charles Martin either. But he's a rough dude in there, so maybe that wouldn't be a horrible matchup. Especially, it would be at least the second best win in his resume. So, any of those guys who have fought for titles or fought guys who have fought for titles, I think any of those, like you said, any of those name heavyweights, I'd be down to see him mix it up with for sure.
Yeah, I think it would be good to give him that kind of level of a guy right now, so
Mm-hmm.
that he and then maybe move him into the Joseph Parker atmosphere right after that, right? Like give him a
Mm-hmm.
guy who's right around Charles Martin, maybe like you said, maybe a half step behind, maybe a half step above, but right around that, so he can get another quality win on him, and then move him up to like fighting a guy like Joseph Parker, or Ruiz, Ortiz, something like that. But I think maybe those guys are maybe a step above where he's ready for right now. But I think if you give him another one of those Charles Martin-esque kind of guys, and we'll see what he does with that. You know what I mean? Like if he can get through that unscathed and pull through, then I'm saying let's go that Parker route, bro. That'd be a good
Yeah,
one.
I think there's one more I'm looking at too now. Just we always talk about bigger guys. If he's going to fight a bigger guy, I think Hellenius wouldn't be a bad option either. I know he had the loss to Wilder. I think he has a comeback fight this summer. He's not like one of those guys. He's legit 6'7". He beat Kopnacki twice, who actually beat Charles Martin too. So I think that would be a solid fight. Anytime we could see Jared in against those bigger guys, a 6'6", a 6'7" kind of guy, I think that would be great to see him with too, because Martin's big, but Hellenius would even be that much taller and longer. So I think that would be an interesting matchup for him, also, honestly. So you got some good fights in there for him. Maybe we could start matchmaking for him. I think we'd be able to do a solid job.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Sign us up, bro. Sign
Yeah,
us up.
exactly. If you guys are paying, anyone listening, we'll help on. So for
Right.
sure.
We are the authority in all things boxing.
Yes, 100%. 100%. So we said Jared's got a bright future still. Really excited to see what comes next for him. But we're gonna move on to somebody who now the future is kind of in doubt a little bit. I was excited because we had you could say four top 10 welterweights all in action this week, both in main events. We had Vergil Ortiz against Ennis. We have Boots against Roman Villa, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first thing we'll talk about is Vergil Ortiz. He had to pull out of this fight. This was the third time that him and Stanionis were supposed to fight. First time Stanionis had an appendix removed, and then the second time it was Vergil. He had got rhabdomyolysis for the second time. And then this time, then I'm not sure exactly. I don't know if it was another flare up. I know he had problems. He had to get hospitalized too. Some other details that were out there and stuff too. So at the end of the day, I just think it's a sad thing, a scary thing. First, I feel bad for Vergil. I definitely feel bad for Stanionis also. Stanionis was set to make. Think about this. He was set to make about $2 million for this fight. His biggest payday by far, a huge fight, gets to defend his regular title, his own main event against Vergil Ortiz, huge stadium, this and that. Third time now the fight's fallen through, so you got to feel for him because this is now the third training camp. The first one he had his damn appendix removed. Two straight training camps he's done. He's cut the weight. He's cut close to the weight. Now he's had to have the fight canceled, so he doesn't go home with the payday. I hope that maybe I'm guessing they might have compensated a bit. I wish boxing could kind of get one of those insurance things where you're able to kind of be able to pocket some of the money, but it's also hard when if you're not fighting, the gate numbers aren't there. So it's hard to do. I always feel bad for the guys who, like Stanionis this time, it wasn't his fault. He loses out on $2 million, which could change your life. So anytime that happens, I think it's tough. But what are your thoughts on Vergil Ortiz and everything he's gone through? Because I think a lot of people are just saying, oh, just move up to 154 and you'll be good. But I don't know. We've talked about it before, but I think this could be something that could linger for a bit and they want to watch on. So what were your thoughts just about when you heard the Vergil news and what do you think he should do going forward?
So it always bothers me to see guys cutting, 20, 30 pounds to get into these weight classes. We were talking about this earlier off air, right? And I say this with my full chest. if you're cutting 20 to 30 pounds to make a weight class, that's not your weight class. Cut it out, because we see it more and more, no pun intended. We see it more and more, especially nowadays with some of these bigger fights, right? A lot of these guys are, like you said, they're passing out before weigh-ins, after weigh-ins. You got guys completely dehydrated, up until they get to get that sip of water, and you see them. There's a huge difference in what they look like. Stop it. Start fighting in a class that you can make comfortably. You know, where you only have to cut maybe 10 to 15 pounds max. You know what I mean? Because that's where you should be fighting on a regular basis. With that being said, I don't know if he's been hospitalized because of his weight cut issues, or maybe his cut issues are making his health worse. Right? He's got a medical situation. Maybe all that shit he's going through to cut that weight is making that medical situation worse. Who knows? I mean, it could be a combination of the things. Um, I think we're going to be talking about whether or not Vergil Ortiz will be ever fighting again at this point, if things continue the way they are. If he does come back, if he can, you know, shake his medical problems, he definitely does need to move up though. He shouldn't be fighting at that weight anymore. Money be damned. If he's going to keep boxing, he needs to move up, bro. In my opinion.
Yeah. And these things are scary because if he had just one of these instances, we'd be looking at it and saying, oh, you got to really watch out. But he had, going back to even before the Stanionis fight, he was supposed to fight Michael McKinson last March. They ended up having to fight in August, but the fight was postponed because he had another one of these things. That was the first time that he had what they call rhabdo. And then they had the Stanionis thing. He had it the second time, and now he's got something the third time. So just like you said, I think we're all just hoping that he's going to be healthy at the end of the day and able to just live his life regularly, just like any other person. I think boxing right now is, odds are he probably will be back in the ring, but that's kind of secondary right now. We want to make sure that just he is okay. Some of the details we've heard, I don't want to speculate too much because you've heard conflicting reports, so you never want to kind of go out there and say something that might not be true. But at the end of the day, this is scary shit we're dealing with every time that like you said, we do know that he did pass out at one point and he did go to the hospital. That's a fact, so we can say that. But besides that, other things, there are some other details out there, but this is scary shit at the end of the day. He's a guy who he is a big guy. Ever since I saw a picture before of him sparring Castano. It's funny because we mentioned Castano earlier, but and he's taller and thicker than Castano. Like he looks like he was sparring Castano and giving the little guy like good work. Like that's literally
Right.
what it looked like. He's a tall, big guy. He's probably close to the same size as Jermell Charlo. We talk about Jermell moving up to 168. Vergil's had the same thing. He's almost 6 feet tall, 70-something inch arm reach, big, thick, strong guy. So yeah, at the end of the day, I hope that he is fully healthy and he does recover. I hope that his team realizes finally now that Dakota's been saying it. We've all been saying it for a while, just like we would want to see him move up. Dakota's been on that for a while. I think this is the final straw, and I hope that his team realizes it because even if he had made the weight, he's clearly taken so much away from him that he's not even close to. If you're making the weight, but you're only 50% of yourself, like you said before, is it even worth cutting all that weight? I don't think so because you can move up to 154. Yeah, you're facing bigger guys, but you're going to be big and strong and actually healthy at those kind of weights too. So I think if he is healthy going forward, I think 154 would be a solid move. But if I were him, in his team, I'd even consider just jumping straight up to 160. I think you see some of the titles are vacant up there. You see not a lot of movement. We've been asking for a middleweight guy to kind of take over the range. Jamal Charlo's probably the best guy, but he hasn't fought in over 2 years, so it's hard to claim him as the best guy still. But if I were Virgil's team, I think that, like we said, a lot of sharks in the water at 154. 160 isn't as deep. I think he could do fine in both weight classes, but I think that if he wants to move up, he could be that guy we've been waiting at for 160. And the crazy thing is, he'd still cut weight to get to 160, I'm sure. So like it would be more along the lines of, like you said, an easier cut. Maybe you're going from 170 to 160 instead of 170 to 147, and I think that would make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, we usually do agree, and we agree on this. I think you should have a cup of coffee with 154, and then move up to 160, right? And then plow through that division. You know what I mean? Like you said, he's a big, strong dude. It's not a thing of skill. I think Vergil Ortiz is one of the most skilled boxers in the division he's in now. I just think he's in the wrong division. Does that change when he moves up to 160? You never know. Maybe he was trying to make 147 because he thinks that's the division he can win in, right? But I think he should have a cup of coffee with 154, figure it out, either stay there. But I think you're right. I think given his size and what we've seen from him and some of these sparring videos, 160 is probably where he needs to be at, and he can do some damage. And I'm almost willing to guarantee that if he were fighting at 160, a lot of these medical problems wouldn't be an issue anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair thing to say. We're not in the camp, so we don't know every single detail, but I think that's clearly based on the injuries and how he suffered the injuries, the details surrounding the injuries, the deteriorating muscles in the kidneys, certain things like that, the passing out thing. Those are all signs of you're grinding your body down. So it's a combination of the weight cut, but also overtraining yourself before you get to the weight cut, which a lot of these guys, well, how do you cut weight? You don't just snap your fingers and lose 10, 15, 20 pounds. You got to run all those miles, which kind of wears down the tendons, wears down your bones. You got to do all these extra rounds. You got to do all these things that take a toll on your body. So I think that would make him a lot healthier at 160. And it's one of those things that I just hope you can fully recover from, because these are the kind of things that if somebody gets one of these things once, it could change your life at the end of the day. So I think that he's unlucky right now, clearly, for this happening again, but he's very lucky if he does come back from this and he does go to have a career now, because I think a lot of people wouldn't be as, I don't want to say lucky because he's clearly still going through a lot of shit, but just the fact that he's going to be given another chance, most likely. And I hope that they make the right decisions and make the most of it, because, like you said, he's one of my favorite fighters to watch. He's a fantastic fighter. He has that long jab, very sharp jab. He throws his combinations. He punches hard. He gets hit a bit on defense, but his defense is also his offense at the same time, too. So he's keeping guys off him. Fantastic fighter. I would have loved to have seen him continue to move up at 147, move up the ranks and get to a title. But at 154 or 160, I'm sure he'll do the same thing. So I just hope that at the end of the day he's healthy, because I think he can still do some great things in this sport for sure, as long as they play their cards right.
Man, I tell you, you do a great job, with these fighters, bro. You be, but yeah, I mean, look, bro. Let's be real clear. He's an entertaining guy, right? He's gonna sell fights, and to be honest with you, him not being on the card makes me completely uninterested in the card now.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That's another one of those blocks that falls. You know what I mean? Like when you look at the card now, it's like, I'll catch it on YouTube later. You know what I mean? Like that's the category this card is now coming, falling into, because of him being off of it. And when you look at it, it's actually a pretty decent card, but that's how much he means to it. You know what I mean? So I think, again, I think at 154, 160, he could be the man, really, especially now when you're starting to see some dominoes fall in areas. And let's face it, 147, who knows what's going to happen, with Bud and Spence, but I think win, lose, or draw, we're going to see that a couple of times, so the division's going to be held up anyway. I think moving now would actually be the best move for him, because the opportunities are going to be plentiful. So we'll see what happens. Again, like you said, first and foremost, though, clear your medical shit, bro. Figure that out. Let's get you healthy, and then go from there. And leave Golden Boy. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say that?
It's all good. I don't think I heard anything, so I think you're good. So, but yeah, I think opportunities, no matter what, at 160, like I said, some of the titles are vacant, some of the champions, they're kind of there for. I would pick Vergil to beat them. Even at 154, I mean, if Jamel's fighting Canelo, if he wins or even loses, I don't think he's coming back to 154 eventually. So I think those titles will become vacant. So he's going to have a lot of opportunities for sure. So the zone main event is now, it's Floyd, Kid Austin Schofield against Haskell Rhodes. Rhodes was he's a tough kind of journeyman contender guy. He's fought once in the last 4 years. So I think it's more a fight where they're looking for Floyd Schofield to look good. We got Jojo Diaz back against Jerry Perez. We have Marlon Esparza and another unification fight. So, like you said, not the most star power card we have out there. Some decent fights. I know for me, I'll be more focusing on the UFC card that they have this weekend, and obviously the card that we're going to touch on in a few seconds, But is there anything that jumps out to you on that card, or anyone you want to quickly talk about? We don't have to go much on it, but I don't really have much either, honestly. So
The big thing to me is Stanionis, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
let's not, we kind of glossed
Mm-hmm.
over it a little bit. We mentioned
Yeah.
it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit here and there. How big of a fight we're losing, Ortiz and Stanionis. Like, I think it was a huge fight, and that's why it's so disappointing, and why I'm probably not going to watch this card. I'm 100% sure I'm not going to watch this card live. I'll probably watch it later on and the replays just to see how everybody kind of did, kind of thing. But that's, now it's like, okay, well, now where does Stanionis go? Because, he's had some setbacks of his own. Now, he looks like he's healthy and ready to rock. Can he get another opponent in short notice? Maybe get on another card, the next month or two. So, I'd like to see what happens with him and where he goes. Do they try again, once Vergil is healthy? Like,
Hope
I think
not,
those
but
are all the questions. Yeah. I hope these are the questions I want to get answered, in short order, So that's the only thing I'm taking away from this card, to be honest with you. I'm not watching that shit.
yeah. And then for Stanionis, I know that he's a PBC guy. He was crossing the street, so Golden Boy really doesn't kind of give a shit about him. But you're telling me after the fight, this fight's fallen apart 3 times, you don't have a backup opponent ready? I thought that was kind of strange too. Like, Stanionis has pulled out, Vergil's pulled out before, both for serious injuries. You tell me you didn't have a 147 guy on standby just to kind of save the card a bit? Is it going to be the same fight as Vergil Stanionis? No. But now you have neither one of them fighting. So I thought that was strange too. So that's another one of those things about Golden Boy, like you kind of briefly touched on a little bit. But at the end of the day, simple things you would have thought it's just common sense to, hey, let's get somebody in
Jared
there.
Anderson got Charles Martin on short notice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You can't get another guy in your
Yeah.
division. Come on, bro.
And even have a guy on standby, because even Martin, even if it was a day or two before the fight, Martin had been in the camp before and he had known, okay, this is a possibility. Oscar could have had 3-5 different guys. It doesn't have to be a top 10 ranked guy. Have somebody ready for Stanionis. I know that they're not promotionally aligned to him, but if you had him on the card, the least you could have done is got him somebody to just give him some rounds or something, because now he lose out on $2 million. Somebody who's probably I don't think I can comfortably say that, I'd hate talking about money, but he's never made $1 million in a fight yet. So to miss out on a $2 million payday just sucks. It sucks for him. It sucks for his team. It sucks for everybody who was getting a percentage out of that paycheck too.
You look at, and I'm not saying he's on the top level, but you look at Adrian Broner, right? He had 5 people fall out of fighting him. But the thing is like, okay, this guy fell out, he had a replacement. This guy fell out, he had a replacement. You know what I mean? And then it finally got to a point where it was like, okay, he had to stretch it out a little bit and then fight somebody else. But if he, of all people, can get replacements on short order, you mean to tell me Golden Boy can't? Come on, bro. I refuse to believe that shit.
Yeah, if he can do it without a promoter on a network that's never really done boxing, Oscar, Bernard, and them, and Golden Boy, and DAZN should be able to do that at the end of the day. No excuse from me on that one.
Most definitely. And could have got a quality opponent to boot. You know what I mean? Like, you sitting up here telling me you can't get some decently ranked guy or a guy with a decent record to come in and just, fill in? Yeah, nah, bro. You're Golden Boy. Cut it out.
Yeah.
Do better.
It's funny, just for example, I'm sure a Blair Cobbs or somebody would have had no problem filling right in. There's so many of those guys at welterweight that I'm sure that were just dying for a chance or would have taken a fight like that. So at the end of the day, I wish they had a replacement, because I feel bad for Vergil, but like you said, we can't forget about Stanionis, because he's the one who was ready. He's a big dude too. He probably cut a lot of weight, was in some hell in this camp too, and to not only not fight, but to miss out on those $2 million, I can't stress enough how much that sucks too, because boxing's a cold game. You're never sure. We saw with Vergil now. We're never sure how many opportunities you're going to get. So you always want to capitalize the most on the ones you get. It just sucks that Stanionis wasn't able to do that.
I'm with you, but we'll see what happens from here, man. Again, I hope that Vergil is okay. I hope that he gets his shit together medically. Hopefully, this is just a setback, and I'm hoping and praying that Stanionis gets another shot with somebody else, because I think he's earned it and deserves it at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm sure he will get kind of more of a tune-up at some point to kind of keep fresh. But I think like we said, he is a PBC guy for the most part. And we'll segue now into this main event because I could see him eventually facing the winner of this fight, and sign me up for that absolutely because I do think Stanionis, as high as I am on Vergil, I thought that Stanionis fight was like a 60-40 fight. I thought Vergil had a real chance of having some trouble with Stanionis in there too. So moving on, we got Boots Ennis against Roman Villa. Villa was more unknown until he had that performance against great close on the show greatly against Rashidi Ellis last year. Kind of fucked up Showtime's plans a bit because they wanted Speedy versus Boots Ennis, but at the end of the day, Villa beats him. Villa gets the spot. I got no problem with that. So a lot of people gave Boots he had some criticism for his last fight for going 12 rounds against that guy from Ukraine. But Boots also won basically every second of that round. And like we said before, that's one of those things where people are going to talk about these prospects. And if they don't look like Superman every time out, someone's going to have something to say. But just like on Jared, that didn't change my stock on Boots at all. And I think that this week, against a better opponent in Villa, I think we're going to see more what Boots is about. So what do you think about this matchup? I think that just like the Ortiz and Stanionis fight would have been, which is why it sucks, I think we got another welterweight banger ahead of us in this one. So
I think people are sleeping on Romain Villa, bro.
mm-hmm.
I think people look at him and they go, well, who is this guy? Right. And I think we were all kind of thinking that, when he got the Speedy Ellis fight, we're like, oh, well, Speedy is going to do what he does. And for the most part, he was doing that. But then Roman Villa does what Roman Villa kind of did. Like if you go back and watch some of his fights, right, that's his thing. He's going to let you think you're winning. And then he starts clubbering the shit out of you. You know what I mean? So I think, shit's falling on me. But, I think that people need to understand that Roman Villa is not going to be a guy that's going to run. He's not going to come in there to lay down. He's going to be in Boots Ennis's face. He's going to be in his chest. And that's just like I think with Boots' last fight. I don't even know the guy's name, but that guy was difficult because of his style, right? His style gave Boots problems because of he's never faced anybody like that. I think Roman Villa is going to be just the same. He's going to give Boots problems because most people who fight Boots don't want to be in his chest. They don't want to be in his face. They want to kind of run around and try to survive. Roman Villa is not coming to survive. He's coming in there, to seek and destroy. He's kind of like a zombie. He's walking around and then he gets close enough to bite the shit out you. Not figuratively, not actually. Yeah.
But he's not Berlanga, so we want to
right. He's not Berlanga. He's not, but he gets close enough, and then he hurts you, and then I think people are surprised when he does. A lot of people think the one loss on his record is disputed. They, a lot of people think he should be undefeated, and I thought he clearly won the Speedy fight. I don't know. Maybe I was watching somebody. A lot of people weren't. A lot of people kind of still had him losing that fight. I thought he clearly won, and I think he deserves this fight. With that being said, I am picking Boots to win. Boots is just I think he's got a lot more talent, and I think he can do everything that Roman can do better.
Mm-hmm. This is the interesting thing. It was Eric Rojas in the chat too that thinks Villa can hurt Boots, biggest puncher he's fought for sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think it's to be determined if he's the best fighter Boots has been in yet, because I think Sergey Limpinets is probably still the best, most accomplished fighter Boots has been in with. But he was also a 140 guy moving up. I do think Villa, even I've seen him at the weigh-in today, he's a big, strong dude too. He's not as tall as Boots, but he's a big, strong guy who probably cuts a lot of weight to get down to 147 also. And he said he can punch. He's got 26 wins. He's got 24 knockouts. Boots has 30 wins. He's got 27 knockouts. So there's a good chance we see a knockout in the fight at the end of the day. Now, I think that for all the things that Villa does really well, which he does put the pressure on, he is a sharp puncher, and he doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, for setting up the shots he does, because it did take him some rounds. And I even thought that you could argue that Speedy could have edged that fight out, just because I thought for like the first 8 rounds, he boxed pretty clean. After that, it was all Villa, so it depends on if you gave Villa a few early rounds, a few swing rounds, which you definitely could have. That's a fight I got no problem either way with for sure. But he really he thought his way through that fight. He was having trouble with Rashidi's speed. He started being able to land that left hook over the right hand. Stylistic things that he slowly did, which a lot of punchers don't get credit for. They hit really hard. People got to remember that. They got to set up those shots too. They're not just like swing him, random shots, rock 'em, sock 'em robots. They're thinking their way through these things also. But just exactly like you said. I think everything Villa does, I think, plays right into Boots' hand. I think it stylistically is a fight that Boots should look good in. But once again, we're saying should. And if I think he could have
Yeah.
a tough fight too. I mean, if Villa hits him with a few shots, this is boxing. Anything can happen. When you got two guys in there who can crack, all it takes is one shot to change everything.
Speedy was supposed to look good against him, right?
Exactly.
I think what people, it's the subtle things that Villa does, right? That maybe your casual fan isn't paying attention to. He was really subtle. Like if you watch even the rounds where it looked like he was getting tagged up a lot, he really wasn't. His defense is real subtle. He doesn't make big changes, one way or the other. He does little subtle stuff. So even if you land on him, you're not landing flush.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a good tuck on his chin. He's got a good chin. He can
Mm-hmm.
take some shots, right? But he's real subtle with his movement. So, even if you're landing, you're not landing flush. He's able to take what you got and throw one back. He has no problems taking two to land one. So that kind of guy is dangerous. A guy with punching power who's got a chin and is real subtle with his move. He doesn't waste a lot of movements. He's not throwing a shit ton of punches, but every one of his punches counts. And that is what can give Ennis problems, right? He hasn't fought a guy who can probably stand up to what he's throwing out, at least for a couple of rounds, right? And throw just as hard back. So, it'd be interesting to see how Boots handles that early, or if he can get, Villa out of there, then he won't have to worry about those later rounds where I think Villa actually does have a better chance of winning. If he can hang around, those later 7, 8, 9, he can do some things because that's when that's when he's the most dangerous.
Yeah, no, it's like that's what he's gonna do. He's gonna sit kind of in that high guard here, subtle movements back and forth, nothing crazy, and he's gonna wait. He's gonna wait as soon as if you throw a punch, he'll catch it. He'll catch him on the glove as much as he can. Not as much head movement, but he's catching the shots. He's kind of turning, and he's firing. As soon as you throw that right hand or that left hand at him, he's catching it and he's throwing that left hook too. So I think that's what he was catching Rashidi with multiple times. He threw the right hand afterwards too to come after it. So it'd be interesting to see because if he does have a pretty good chin, it seems. If he has one of those legendary kind of chins, we could have a hell of a fight on our hands too. That's to be determined so far because he does have the loss. Like I said, it was a split decision loss. It was a fight that I haven't watched, but like you said also, I think it's a fight that could have gone back and forth. A lot of people saying at the end of the day,
Right.
it was a decision loss. We're not sitting here saying that he's Pernell Whitaker. He's a come forward fighter who hits hard, and as the rounds go, he gets stronger and stronger. So if he's able to survive, it's a crazy thing because I could see this fight ending in the first round and the 12th round. And I don't even have a lean on which way I think it would go. I think the Boots probably does get the job done somewhere in those mid rounds, but it's an interesting fight to see because I am pretty confident that Boots will win, but I'm even more interested to see probably how he wins because I think there's a lot of different ways that this fight could go. And not to count Villa out yet either because we've seen this would be a crazy upset, but we've seen some crazier things in the sport. So you absolutely never know.
Yeah, I think for Boots to get a knockout, surprisingly, I think he has to get it done early. I don't think that. I think if he is around, like I said, in those 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds, he's going to finish the fight. Because again, that's his style. That's what he does, and I think he would have done enough at that point to kind of tire Boots out. He's going to do the work to get it more even, on an even playing field at that point. So I think if Boots is going to win by knockout, he's got to do it early. I don't think he's going to knock him out super early. I think maybe around the 5th, maybe 6th round, he catches him, and then which will be right before he'd have to worry about Villa doing what Villa does. So I think that would be my prediction if I have to make one. But again, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if we have they go rounds, and this is a close decision at the end of the night because that's what Roman Villa, he's set up for. He's built for that, and I think a lot of people look at what Boots is, and they go, "Oh, well, he's just gonna walk through this guy." Hey, calm that down. Roman V ain't no bitch. He ain't come in there and just be like, "Okay, knock me out." Nah, bro. But I think Boots does want to make a bigger splash. I think he's looking to get people off his ass for his most recent fight. I think he does want to come in there and things spectacular, get a knockout. I think he'll get it around 4 or 5, maybe 6. But I don't think he should be rushing it. I think he should be setting it up. Don't go looking for super heavy punches right out the gate, because then that can get you hurt. Because Roman Villa's power is legit, and because he does have a legit boxing IQ, he's not just gonna take that. So I think 5-6, he can get him out of there.
Yeah, I'm kind of along those same lines, kind of somewhere in the mid rounds. It's interesting too because they both haven't fought a guy like they're fighting this weekend, because we can't say with Villa he gets stronger as the fight goes along, but that was also against Rashidi Ellis, who is a fantastic fighter. He's a guy from around my area, so I always support those guys. But even all bias aside, he is a really good fighter. He beat Alexis Rocha cleanly a few years ago, was on the shelf after that. But he's also really, I mean, he's speedy, so he's known for his hand speed. He's a solid puncher, but he's not a huge puncher. So Villa got stronger as the rounds went on in that fight. The question is, with Boots is hitting him, if he's really digging down to the body, landing big shots, does Villa have that same energy in the back half of the fight? And also, like we said, how does Boots deal with having a guy in there that can really crack? I think as long as he, like you said, doesn't lets the knockout come to him and doesn't go searching for the knockout, I think he will get it. But you always want to be careful, especially when you had the performance, which we still had no problems with that last performance. But when a lot of people did, don't let those fans get in your head, because the same fans that were saying that, if you get clipped, they'll be saying, oh, he doesn't have a chin. All the bullshit we just talked about with Jared Anderson, basically. So you want to make sure you're never going to be able to please everybody. There's a lot of, I love boxing fans. There's a lot of great boxing fans. There's a lot of dumbass boxing fans at the end of the day. There really are. I mean, there really are. So I think that you can't please everybody at the end of the day, as long as you do your job in the ring, which I think you will. That's all you can control. And that's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of dumbass boxing fans who are sitting up there saying, well, why didn't Jared Anderson just knock him out? He should have just knocked him out. Yeah, like knocking heavyweights out is an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like fighting a former champion and knocking him out, considering you haven't fought anybody anywhere close to his level before. Yeah, that's what you should do. Yeah.
I love the good old, like, oh, just do this and do that. It's like, yeah, I'm sure he's not thinking about that. Don't worry. I'm sure if you got off the couch and told him in the corner, they'd be like, oh yeah, you know what? I think that would probably work. Like, as if they're not thinking these things through in the ring.
Yeah. Why doesn't he just do this? Yeah, that shit is crazy to me. Like, it's real easy for us to say what he should do, but you forget that he's in the ring with another huge ass person who's wanting to knock his block off too. So, people forget that. I think that I actually really, really like this fight. Like, I know some people, your casual fans are like, yeah, whatever. I love this fight. I think the more intriguing thing to me is Villa winning. Like, if Villa wins, bro, you know what I mean? Like, I think he'll get the next fight quicker than Boots would have, because I think people are so afraid of Boots and his talent and what he can do that they're slow to put their guy in with him. I think people see Villa and they say, "Oh, I can beat him. I can beat that style. I can do." So I think if Villa wins, he's going to get a title shot before Boots will. If I'm being honest with you, or he'll get the next big payday before Boots would have, because people are looking at him as food and not realizing, this guy is a legit contender. He didn't get lucky beating Speedy Ellis, is what I'm going to point out.
Yeah,
I do big Boots to win, but we'll see, man. You never know.
Yeah, bro. Villa is that perfect kind of style where if you watch him on film, guys will be like, "Oh, there's openers. Like, I could beat him." It's like you said, it's easier to say that until you're in the ring with him, and then he's taking your shots, and he's still coming round 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So on paper and on film, a lot of guys are probably looking like, yeah, I could beat this guy. Once you get in the ring with him, it's kind of like a Rashidi Ellis probably thought, oh, I'm going to wash this guy. A lot of us thought that he'd probably wash that guy. You're washing him early on, but you notice that every single round is getting harder and harder and harder. And it's hard to measure those kind of things on the film too, because it comes down to heart, it comes down to will, it comes down to pure puncher power, and those things are hard to kind of gauge sometimes.
It was beautiful to watch though. Like, Roman Villa was getting, like you said, he was getting better every round. It was almost like he was studying his guy. He was learning a little bit. And next thing you know, Rashidi's he's having some problems, bro. He was in some deep waters and couldn't swim out them motherfuckers. He was, and it seemed like every punch Roman Villa was throwing was hitting. Like, it was everything he was throwing was landing, and everything Rashidi was doing was just desperation. And it was like, it looked like a complete night and day fight. The first 4 rounds and the last 4 rounds it
Mm-hmm.
was like a completely different night altogether. So I hope Boots yeah, Boots. I hope Boots has done his homework, bro. Because if he hasn't, he could be in some trouble.
Yeah, this should be a good one. Like you said, it's not a fight that casual fans might not be paying attention to. But if you do have casual friends that are casual boxing fans, I think this is the fight that you want them to tune into because, like we said, you got 30-0, 27 knockouts, 26-1, 24 knockouts. It should be a head-on collision. And both guys, I mean, we know Boots is a pretty good boxer. We've talked about how Villa doesn't get enough credit for the way he thinks through his things. But at the end of the day, these two guys are going to try to knock each other the hell out. I think that's what a lot of casual fans want to see. And we can't lie, we'd like to see that too. So I think it's a great fight, great matchup. And I'm happy that Villa, sometimes these guys who win these fights don't get rewarded right away. So I'm happy that he got the Rashidi Ellis win when came in the B side, and he's getting another big time opportunity after also.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be. I don't. To be honest with you, I'd be surprised if it goes rounds. No matter who wins,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be surprised if it goes rounds. But I would love to see it though, because I think this is going to be some high level boxing, bro. And sign me up for that.
Yeah, and a lot of people gave Boots shit for his last performance, but think about this. We talked about with Jared, but him going those 12 rounds against that guy, not the same style of fighter. He's going to deal with more pressure in this fight, but he proved to himself he can go 12 rounds. Villa just did the same thing. So had Boots wiped that guy out in a round and a half, we'd be sitting here saying, oh, well, Boots hasn't gone the rounds yet. Like, let's see. We're still saying what happens in the later rounds, but we've seen him go. He and his team have seen him go 12 rounds. So I think that's another underlying benefit that I think will help Boots out too, and Villa that they've both gone the 12-round distance before. So
That's why we don't know this dude's name. His first name's Karen.
yeah,
But yeah, Karen. He fought the Karen. But
Mhm.
here's the thing: like Karen, I think the guy was undefeated. When he fought Boots, right? Like it wasn't like he was
Mhm.
a bum or anything like that. The guy was undefeated. He has a style that's going to give everybody problems, no matter what he ends up doing with his career going forward. He's got a style that's going to get. There's no pretty wins against this guy, until he gets maybe faded or something like that. But it was like you said, it was a good 12 rounds. It was a good way to say, okay, if I fight a guy like that, you know, how do I get past that? So it's just like you said, it's the Jared Anderson thing. I've never fought a guy like Charles Martin. Now I have. Now I've got a recipe to follow, or at least to build upon. I think that's what Boots gets. Like you said, he won every single round. It wasn't like he was ever in any trouble losing the fight. He's got a different beast in Roman Villa.
Mhm.
Don't expect Karen to show up,
Mhm.
against when you get Roman. So we'll see what happens. And I think again, he's fighting the hardest puncher he's probably ever faced by a mile, bro, by a mile. So it'll be interesting to see how he takes where Roman Villa's throwing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that will come down to how the fight goes. Whoever takes the other person's shot better probably win the fight. So, last comment I have on that fight with Chuka Zhan, the guy from Ukraine, also is the crazy thing is that with before that fight, he wasn't really a mover like that either. He was the guy who more stood in the pocket. So I think that even more speaks to the respect they had for Boots coming in. Probably got touched with something in the first or second round and said, okay, fire for fire. We ain't winning that matchup, so we're gonna kind of stick the place out, get our decision, see if we can maybe take him into deep water. So he never really fought that way. So I think that was a surprise for Boots because they had watched even Boots had said afterwards, like, well, we watched him on film. He was standing in the pocket more, so they were kind of expecting that fight. The thing with Villa, it is gonna be a much harder fight, but also there's no sugarcoating with Roman Villa. He's not going to come in, like you said, he's not going to do the Ali shuffle and kind of move around and just stick the jab out there. He's going to come to fight. So I think that it'll be great to see how both guys deal with it. And I think that it's just a fantastic fight overall.
Well said. Yeah,
Banger. Good old fashioned banger. So, two solid fights on the undercard, too. I feel like I always say this, but anytime I feel like we get a Showtime card, correct me if I'm wrong, but do all three fights, are they not really good matches? And do they not deliver basically every single time out? Like I feel like they
the,
basically every single time out they deliver. I never watch a Showtime event and I'm ever like, oh. Besides, we've seen some crazy things. We saw the Rolly stoppage. I mean, there's been moments like that, but I think for the most part, they match the cards pretty good. And I'm always impressed by the opening fight and then the co-feature. I think they always match really good, and we got two good ones here also. So
I
we
mean, there have been
have
a couple of times where the undercard fights were better than the main event
mhm,
on Showtime a couple of times. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
Because of how well they match up things. Whoever is doing the matchmaking over at Showtime, kudos to you.
Yeah, I think that's Tom Brown from TGB. So shout out to you. He's done a great job with just a lot of the PBC guys this year, and he's made a lot of those big fights. Obviously, Al Heyman, rightfully so, gets a lot of credit too. But Tom Brown of TGB is the official promoter, and he does a lot of work behind the scenes too. So, two really really good fights on this undercard. We have first is a lightweight fight. Maybe my favorite matchup, honestly, is Edwin De Los Santos, the guy who he's the guy who knocked out Ryo late last year. I don't know if you remember that on the Luis Ortiz card, but so he's coming off that big win, which is funny that Ryo came back before he did when he knocked Ryo out. But he's fighting Joseph Adorno. Adorno's been around. He had the draw with Jermaine Ortiz. He's had losses to Michelle Rivera and Elvis Rodriguez as of recent, but a test for both guys. And I think De Los Santos is the A side in this fight, but I think Adorno's got a great shot. So I think that that's a great fight where I think you pin two guys against each other that can give the other person problems. Adorno can punch, but I think he's got more tools in his toolbox. De Los Santos can absolutely punch, so I think that's a fight that can definitely be a banger. Co-main event, we got Yoelvis Gomez against Marquise Taylor. So actually, I might have switched up those orders. I don't know. At the end of the day, those are two fights on the card. I don't forget the order, but you guys can check Showtime for
Yeah.
that tomorrow. But Yoelvis Gomez, he's 6-0. He's kind of one of those Cuban guys who's been being moved on the fast track. He's fighting Marquise Taylor. Marquise Taylor, I think, is one of the most underrated guys in the sport of boxing. He's tall, he's long. He only has one knockout in his 14 wins, but he's got boxing skills. And I think that Yoelvis Gomez, rightfully so, he's the underdog, but he's beaten 2 or 3 undefeated fighters these last few years. He's got some really, really good wins. And I think this is a great test for Yoelvis Gomez, being 6-0, fighting a guy who's already beat undefeated guys. Do you have any thoughts on any of those two undercard matchups? Or
What you said.
yeah,
I'll be honest with you. I don't really know all of them that great. I haven't been watching their fights if I'm being 100% honest. But I'm going to find out more about them.
Mm-hmm.
On this because I'm going to watch that whole card. So to me, this is important, right? I might not, and I'm a boxing guy. I might not know these guys, but here they are. They're on that card for a reason, right? Showtime doesn't just put bums to fill seats. So I'm probably going to be a fan after this of one or not all of them. So, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. No, it should be great. I like how they matched up. And for those two fights, I could see either guy winning. So I think anytime you have that, I think that that's what we want to see at the end of the day. We got two great matchups there, and I think we shall see how it turns out. Once again, it's another good Showtime card. It's matched up good. And like you said, it's a great opportunity for these guys too, because it's not just you. A lot of people even watching the show, a lot of people who cover the sport of boxing get paid a lot of money aren't really as familiar with these guys too. So I think it's a great opportunity because all 4 of those guys can fight. So I'm happy that they are getting this opportunity. Also, we'll see who takes advantage of it for sure.
Look at Showtime, man. Just they continue to put out quality product, bro. Their matchmaking has been great. I mean, lately PBC is starting to catch up a little bit. They're finally starting to put some of their shit together. But I'm telling you, Showtime is on the level, baby. Like I wouldn't say it's quite HBO level shit yet, but they're about as close as we can get to what HBO
closest we got for sure. So
yeah.
remember those rumors before about PBC, Showtime, they're going broke, they can't afford the big fights. My question to all those people is, what the hell happened? They just snap it. Did Al Heyman snap his fingers and get millions of dollars? Like at the end of the day, I don't know if it was half people. Like a lot of people, I'll just be honest. It seemed like they were kind of preying on the downfall of PBC and Showtime, which I'll never understand. As much shit as we joke and we poke fun at the zone and stuff, at the end of the day, bro, like we want all these fights. We want all these fighters, promoters to make money. If they're not making money, then the sport's not doing good. So I think it's just silly at the end of the day when people are like, oh, these guys are going broke, those guys are going broke. So all those narratives are dead in the water at this point because clearly, if out of all the networks, they're putting in the work this year. So I just think that shit was always funny.
They've said that shit about Top Rank back in the day. They said that shit about Golden Boy. Remember, there was the point where people were saying, oh, Golden Boy is on the way out of here. They're starting to say that shit again. It's the boxing business, bro. Like everybody has dull moments. Nobody expected HBO to get the fuck out of town because they were, they were up here. But Showtime's, as long as Showtime wants to be in the boxing business, they'll be in it. PBC, you're pretty much, they can do whatever the hell they want at this point. But yeah, it's the boxing business, bro. Sometimes you're gonna go through some shit before, you start putting on the bigger fights.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to you, Weedy, in the chat too. Thank you for tuning in. We see you on here a lot. So Ryan and Tank did make them bank. Don't get me wrong, but they've had a ton of fights, and they had the Player Benavidez one before that. They've had even all the regular Showtime cards that they've had. They've been putting on good fights left and right. So at the end of the day, it's been great to see, and I think that we're getting to a point. We got Canelo, Charlo, we got Spencer Crawford, we got Frank Martin in a few weeks. We got Everslandi Lara, Danny Garcia at some point. So it's not like this ship is slowing down at all either. So we're going to continue to see great fights. Like that's all we can ask for too. So it should be a great end of this year.
I'm just excited that we're actually getting the fights we want to see now. Mm-hmm. Like we're getting these big, shout out to Tank and Ryan for fighting each other.
Yeah.
Shout out for, Rolly and all those guys and the Lomachenkos. We're, guys are fighting each other. Cut this. I'm waiting to fight the next guy shit out. Fight each other. I'm guaranteeing you the money will be there for your next fight. And it's not like back in the day, where, you take a loss, you might not get a lot of money in your next fight. As long as you fight your ass off, there's gonna be money now, and so get out there and get in there and get going. Yeah, I mean, Weedy's right. I mean, bro, like these fights is ridiculous right now. Like we're spoiled a little bit in 23.
Yeah, no, we really are. And it's crazy that we have already had a full year of fights. We're only halfway through the year. We got so many big fights coming up too. And I've only been a hardcore fan of sport for a few years, but it seems like every year it gets better and better too. I joined at a time where it's kind of up and down a little bit, but ever since then, every single year, it's been kind of going up and up a bit more. So fantastic thing for sure. The last thing we'll touch on quickly, I'm just going to say personally, I don't really give a shit about these kind of things, but we'll touch on it. A lot of people were talking about it, asking about it. So I don't know if you've seen, but Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson have been going back and forth a bit just about negotiations for their fight. The rumor is Devin Haney offered Shakur a 75% to 25% purse split for the fight, which is right in line with what the WBO mandatory purse would be. And from Haney's side, you can say, hey, listen, I have more leverage. I fought on pay-per-view. Kambosos didn't have any of those things, and I took even less money against Kambosos. I did it twice, this and that. Shakur can say, well, I'm worth more than 25%. Do you have an opinion on this? Do you even give a shit about these negotiations? I always say it. I'm never someone to really count up a guy's money and stuff like that and say, oh, this guy's worth that. Because at the end of the day, you're worth whatever the market thinks you're worth. So do you really care about this at all? I figured people will probably want us to talk about it a little bit. So just quickly.
I'll say this. When you're the B-side, you're the B-side. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's got all the belts. It doesn't matter what the sanctioning bodies say. Floyd was the B-side when he fought, De La Hoya, and he conceded to everything. Why? Because he knew, or he was confident in himself that he would win, and that would turn into the biggest kind of money he's ever had in his life, and he was right. If you're Shakur and you think you can beat Haney, right? Because let's face it, win, lose, or draw, you're still going to make money after that fight, bro. You're Shakur Stevenson. Like, if you fight Haney, and you lose, nobody's going to, you know what I mean? Nobody's going to hold that against you. You fought the guy with all the belts and you lost. Okay, whoop-de-doo. But if you think you can legit beat this dude, take that split. Because that's what the sanctioning body is going to offer you too. People need to get out their feelings. Like, this is what the sanctioning body has set up. It's not like he's offering them, 75-25 to be an asshole. He's offering them that because guess what? That's what they're going to offer him too. So, and that's what their rules have set up. Should they renegotiate closer to maybe like a 60-40 split? Yeah, but he doesn't have to. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to. He's the champ. Take what you're going to get. Then when you get all the belts, do the same shit to him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's how that's how I feel at the end of the day. Like I said, I'm never someone to say, oh, this guy's worth this. Or I hate when people say, oh, this guy's not worth that much money. It's like, well, who the hell are you to say that? Because if a promoter pays it, then they're clearly worth the fucking money at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what we type or what we say. If someone gets paid that money, that's what they're worth. But I agree, especially Shakur's made all these comments. I was at his fight in Newark. when he talked about Devin, called him out, just saying like, "Oh, I used to spar. We have sparred a lot. I've always got the best of him. I'll make this easy work." It's like, okay, if you'll make it easy work, if you take that 25%, besides fighting Tank Davis, you will never have to be the B-side again the rest of your whole career. You can make the
Period.
75s, you could make the 80-20s, you could do whatever the hell you want. You'll be the undisputed lightweight champion and take advantage of that because Devin also, he has options. He could say, okay, I could fight Tank right now. I could fight you, Shakur. I could also move up. I could fight Regis. I could move up and fight Ryan. He's got all these options. And if you're Shakur, Devin has all 4 belts right now. If they don't make this fight and Devin moves up, all 4 belts get scattered and get vacated. So Shakur would probably do his thing and he would pick up a lot of the belts along the way. But you have the chance right now to become the undisputed lightweight champion and then completely control the whole division. One champ in the whole division. So I think that as long as if I were him, like Rudy said there, Devin took a smaller split to fight Kambosos. And even Kambosos had never been. I think that Devin has more leverage here than Kambosos even did there because Kambosos was a champ, but he beat Teofimo. He had never been on pay-per-view or anything. He didn't have a win like Devin did against Lomachenko, whether people thought close fight, but at the end of the day, he won. And either win, lose, or draw, he was on pay-per-view. They did a good gate at the MGM Grand. So he showed he's a bigger draw than I think people gave him credit for. Is he a Tank Davis kind of draw? No, but he has all the leverage at this time. And I think that I have no problem with Shakur wanting more. I have no problem with Devin staying with what he wants because that's what the purse split would be. And he feels that, okay, I took the short end one time. If you're really about it, you do the same thing. So I think
nobody is ever going to compare. I don't mean to cut
no, you good.
you off, but I do. Kambosos is nowhere near either one of their levels, right? Devin proved that in the ring twice, but no one's ever going to say Shakur Stevenson should ever give Kambosos anything more than 20% if he fights him, right? But Kambosos had all the belts. He was the champ. That means something. It doesn't matter how he got there. You got all the belts. You get to tell people what the fuck to do. You don't like it? Come beat me and get all the belts your damn self. Then you can tell me what to do if I want to fight you again, right? Shut the fuck up. Take the money. You think you can beat him. You think you can dog walk him like you did in sparring. Okay. Take your little 25% because you don't need the money. You know, it's about pride. You know, that's what it is. Get your pride out the motherfucking way. Go fight the dude. Get your bag. And then when you do the rematch, because you're gonna do the rematch, or Heaney will move up. Either way, then you could tell Tank, right? If you beat him and then Heaney moves up, because let's face it, the next big money fight in the division would be Tank, right? Because then you could tell Tank, well, hey Tank, I know belts don't really matter to you because you're you're a superstar, but guess what? I got all the belts. I want more money. That gives you more leverage to fight Tank. You feel me? And if Tank wants all the belts, then he's got to kind of step and fetch a little bit. But he isn't like if Shakur and Tank were to negotiate now, Tank could tell him, look, I'll give you 70-30 if you're lucky. And he'd have to cash grab at that. But, do what you got to do now so you can do what you want to do later.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, like I said, it's easier for us to say, but there's also ways to kind of get around that purse split. Like Vergil Ortiz and Stanionis was a 75-25 purse split. So what does Golden Boy do because Stanionis is getting more money? They give Vergil an added bonus also. So I'm sure Jay Prince is Shakur's manager, top rank. If they really wanted to make this happen, if it's 75-25, I think they could kind of get some money on the side and give Shakur a bit of money also. We've seen Canelo do that with Golovkin. We've seen guys do that before. There's ways to kind of work around that. At the end of the day, like you said, if he thinks Devin's easy work, it's easy for us to say, but if you take that 25%, you have more leverage going forward than you've ever had. Even if you're not the ace out against Tank, let's say if it's 60-40 in Tank's favor, like you said, it wouldn't be 60-40 in his favor if there's no belts. So if you get all the belts, you have a lot more leverage like we've seen with Kambosos. So at the end of the day, it's easier for us to kind of say because we're not giving up the money, but if you take this 25% now, I think if it makes you X amount of millions in the future, look at it as an investment, basically. You're investing in the short term for your long-term gain. I think if he's able to do that, I think it could work for him. Because I think most people would make him the favorite against Devin also. I think Devin would have a good shot in that fight, but I think Shakur would definitely be the favorite. So I think roll the dice.
I'm picking Shakur every day of the week, twice on Sunday. And what I want people to understand, like casual fans of the sport, you have to understand what Devin Haney is offering Shakur is business as usual in boxing. He's not offering him this, because he doesn't want the fight, because he's
Mhm.
trying to price himself out of it, or he's running or nothing like that. He's not doing it to be a cheapskate. If you look at the rules within these sanctioning bodies, right, that's the price point. So he's offering him what the price point is. Should they negotiate about it? Maybe, but he does not have to, nor should he, because he has all the belts, right? So if he wants to negotiate with Shakur, he's going to be doing that strictly out of a respect level, or to help a brother out, because he does not have to. He's got all the belts. He can do exactly what he's already offered. And if you don't want to take the money, guess what? Somebody else will, bro.
100%. So, like Weedy said too, about the Virgil Stanionis fight, it does suck just because there would have been. It sucks for both guys, but just it would have been a great fight too. We talk about Boots and Villa being a great fight. That would have even been. Both fights are guaranteed to deliver, but that fight even more so. Both guys are so active; they fight very similar. So I think it would have been a fantastic fight for sure. I think we've basically touched on everything. I know that Diego Pacheco is about to fight right now, or it might be starting to fight on the zone. So I think I'm going to go try to catch that right now. But any last kind of comments from you, or before I wrap this on up? 'Cause I think we've basically done everything.
Man, as always, please support your local fighters, man. It doesn't matter whether you live in a major city or a small city. There are boxers in just about every city in this country. Please support your local guys, because again, those guys from those podunk towns, or the towns that don't really get a lot of love, or they're not getting a lot of love now, those guys turn into world champions, right? Those guys move to the bigger cities to get the bigger opportunities because they had a community that supported them. Please continue to support your local boxers. Show up for those guys. I know down here in Tucson shows up for their local guys no matter what their records are, right? And that support helps these guys later on down the road. Continue to do that. And for the love of God, follow Jack Kelly. He's the expert.
Neither one of us are experts. Like you say, we're just two guys in opinion. Be on the lookout too. We're gonna have a little bit of rebranding with the show. We're gonna have some new things coming for you guys, so be on the lookout for that. Appreciate you, Weedy, and everyone in the comments. I see you started the third. I'm turning that on my DAZN right now. Thankfully, the DAZN is actually working, so I'll be able to watch it. So that's always a plus, especially considering I pay for it. But everybody stay safe, and we'll see you guys next week. As always, we appreciate y'all for tuning in.
See you, Jack.
Peace out.